Me and my husband, we've been married for 9 years now. 4 years into our marriage, he did have a bout of infidelity. We came across some pictures of when we were separated, and the boys asked me, why aren't you in these pictures? And I told them, oh, you were with just your dad. From that day on, I've had that question of, do I ever say more?
What's going on? What's going on? This is John with the Dr. John Delony Show, where we're talking about your mental and emotional health and your relationships and whatever else you got going on in your life. So grateful for you tuning in, listening, making this one of the top podcasts and YouTube channels on the planet. And I'm so grateful for those who are brave and willing to just open up in front of everybody in the club and talk about what's going on. Those who call into the show and are willing to talk about their lives in public. If you want to sit with me and we can figure out what the next right step for you is, give me a buzz at 1-844-693-3291. It's 1-844-693-3291, or go to johndelony.com/ask, A-S-K. All right, let's go out to Houston, home of the Astros. Not to be confused with the almost last place Rangers. What's up, Candace?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm good. What's going on in your world?
Well, just having mom guilt and wondering how much to overshare, undershare with my children as they get older,
All right, tell me more.
Okay, so me and my husband, we've been married for 9 years now, but 5 years ago, 4 years into our marriage, he did have a bout of infidelity. And of course, I found out.
Hold on, a what of infidelity?
Oh. He had infidelity on his part. I found out.
Okay, but you said it was a what of infidelity? Like a speck? Is that what you said?
I called it a spout.
A spout.
It was one incident. Incident.
Just a little spout. Just a little
spout.
Whoopsie-doo. Okay.
Minor lapse in judgment,
Okay. So he had a bad evening, and 5 years ago, and y'all decided to stay together and work it out?
We did.
Okay.
We went to marriage counseling. We have done so much therapizing on our own.
Okay.
And our marriage is fantastic now.
Okay.
And I heard a show not too long ago of yours where a woman said that she's in the same room as her husband. They're going to touch. And that's me and my husband. So, we're great now.
Okay.
But, my children, as they get older, they're going to have relationships. And we came across some pictures of when we were separated, and the boys asked me, why aren't you in these pictures? And I told them, oh, you were with just your dad. And we just needed some time apart right then. And that's all I said, and I moved on. And then from that day on, I've had that question of, do I ever say more? When they're having a hard time in their divorce or whatever relationship later on, do I ever say more?
How old are they now?
Well, now they're definitely not the age. They are 8, 6, and then the ones that were not around at the time are 2 and 3.
Okay.
So very, very, very young.
Okay.
And this is not their cross to bear, and I understand that.
Sure.
I do not want to be like your dad, and their daddy is their hero.
Yeah.
And I don't want to taint that.
Can I ask you a hard question?
Mm-hmm.
Your marriage is still together in large part because of the work your husband did, but also in large part because you chose to stay. And you've done a ton of work too, fair?
Yes, a ton.
Okay, this is a hard question to ask you, but on some days, do you look out upon your family? Maybe you look out in the yard and your husband's playing with those 4 boys, and you just want to stand up on the steps of your home and yell hey, I need credit for this?
No, because he gives it to me.
Okay.
He does.
So your choice to tell them isn't why would you tell them? Let me ask you that.
Because it is what a lot of our relationship is, not what it's built on, but the trust and the openness that came of it. I didn't know all that stuff going into marriage. And I wonder, how do I tell them those lessons, I guess, without divulging too much and destroying their image of their parents that are very, very happily married now.
Sure. I guess it would depend on the context, and I guess it would depend on the questions they're asking. And in many ways, I think it's a joint story to tell.
Yeah.
And you're right. I would wait till they're adults. I don't see any reason why to bring it up now. Okay. And let's say they're 17 or 16 and they're dating somebody and they get cheated on and it breaks their heart. You can say things like, I was cheated on too. And I know what that feels like. Oh, you were? And you'd be like, I don't want to talk about the details of it, but I've had a broken heart too. There's ways to slowly have that conversation. And there's ways that honestly, if y'all ever choose to tell the story in public, like at a local church, or y'all decide to like write a blog about it, you'll need to address it with them first. They don't hear about it secondhand. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I've never had this thought before, but in a way, I almost feel like it's your husband's story to tell them.
I felt that way also because when we were going through it, part of his therapy was to write things down because, it's hard for men to say things out loud.
Yeah.
And he wrote it in the point of view of like telling our kids. And he wrote a letter apologizing to them even, and he still has that. And will he ever give that to them? I have no idea. But yeah, in a big way, I do feel like if it was going to be said, it would be his thing to tell.
Yeah. And it might come a point when they're 25 and 26 and somebody's breaking up with getting, their marriage is on the rocks, like all young marriages are. And you might tell them, hey, I'm going to sit with my hurting kids or child and let them know I've been there too. And this is your story to tell. Hopefully he's a man of character and will walk alongside his sons and his daughters and say, here's what happened. And they'll have this many X number of years to show what healing looks like.
Yes.
Right? This just came up. Is it sitting on you for some reason right now? Or did it just happen to pop into your head and you just thought you'd call?
We were flipping through those pictures about a week ago, and that was the first time I've ever came close to having to say, there was a time that me and your dad weren't together, and you did spend a weekend with him alone, and I was not there.
How long were y'all apart?
We were separated for a little over a month.
Okay.
And he did everything that a man should do that did something like that. He did everything that he was supposed to do to get me back and to prove everything.
That's cool.
Or I would not be here.
Yeah. Well, and did he talk to him?
To the kids when they looked at the pictures? He was not there. He was at work. I told him about it when he got home, and we just moved on.
Okay.
So obviously, I've been thinking about it, but I told him, we were going to talk today, and he told me it's a question he's often wondered himself. So he was curious to know what you'd say.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. My son's 14, and we are just now entering into a season when he's asking bigger questions and harder questions, and I don't think it's appropriate. If I had that in my background, it would not be appropriate for me to tell him now.
Yeah.
It would be appropriate for me to say, hey, buddy, I've messed things up big time. And I had to go do X, Y, and Z. Well, what do you mean mess up? I had some core convictions that when you get older, I'll tell you about. But I can't imagine sitting down and laying that on a child while that's a lot for them to carry.
And I do not want to do that.
I know, of course.
Like I said, I do not want to change their image of their dad.
Well, it's not. They need to know their dad's not perfect.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? And does he ask for forgiveness? Does he say, I'm sorry? Things like that already?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
I mean, 5 years in, he still makes every effort.
That's cool. I want y'all to be very careful about what you just said, image protection.
Okay.
Because that will destroy your kids. They need to know mom and dad are fallible. Mom and dad aren't perfect. And both mom and dad love each other sideways and forwards and backwards. And I think then as the stories come out, there'll be disappointment. There will be heartbreak. There'll be, I can't believe that. But there never will have been an image to prop up.
Yeah. And I don't want to tell them to be like, oh, we're a survival story,
Exactly.
I do not want that.
Yeah.
But we are not a perfect relationship, but a lot of our friends watching us go through our relationship and seeing how he did and how their people didn't do, it showed them that, what should happen. Not saying that we did everything right, but showing with them like what effort looks like.
Candace, can I just tell you, it's okay to say we did everything right. We did everything right as we knew to do it after something like that.
As best we could.
Yeah, and I want you to not downplay that, because you beat the odds, and y'all not only beat the odds, y'all rebuilt something. Sounds like it's stronger. Sounds like it is more united, and it's a testament to, like, this is what legacy change looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
And we always say that we suck. It sucks that it happened, but we're so glad that it did, because it brought out trust and complete vulnerability in us. And that I didn't know that marriage took so much work.
I don't think any of us do. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. But also, I hear that sentiment so often behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything, and it was the worst time of our life. And it's hard to explain that, because then someone's going to be like, oh, should I just go cheat? No, of course not.
No.
But
it's also hard to admit.
But it's hard to admit, like, we are simply here because something really tough happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, this is so dependent on the reason, the question, whatever. I mean, the story would ever come out, who's telling what and how, the age of the kids, the maturity. There's some 18-year-olds that could hear this just fine. There's some 17-year-olds that could probably hear this just fine. And there are some 23-year-olds that, geez, man, it'd be a zoo. So, I think it's just going to be context dependent, but I think that's something we would hold off for a long time. But I do want to be very careful about any sort of like image protection or any sort of look at how great everybody is. At the same time, it's important for my wife to say to my son, especially, but to my daughter also, hey, your dad just did X, Y, and Z. I want y'all to see that, because that's what a good man does. And I want... I do the same thing with my kids when I point out something great my wife did. And yesterday happened. Yesterday I was with my son, and my wife called, and I had said, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? I'm in the middle of another crazy diet, and this is real important to me for the evening. And she called when I was almost to the house, and she's like, hey, I didn't do that thing. Or I did it, but I didn't check. Anyway. And my son could see it on me, and he said, well, what's wrong? What did mom just say? And I told him, hey, I asked for this thing, and she wasn't able to make it happen. I'm disappointed. But then he got to also see me walk in the door and treat her with respect and kindness and dignity, and to then make do with what I had in front of me. And so he got to see, oh, you get disappointed sometimes, and then you go do the next right thing. You don't throw a temper tantrum. You don't yell and scream. You don't curse your wife, whatever. So I think it's important for our kids to see the good stuff and the tough stuff, and to always humanize us. But never tell your kids because you want them to be like, wow, mom or dad is amazing. And never tell your kids about things you've done in the past because you feel bad and you want them to carry it with you, right? You're ashamed, or you feel guilty and like, I need to bring my kids along. But if your story in the past can be a guide for your kids or a way to connect, I think it can be incredibly important. And I think always sparing the gory details when possible. They don't need to know the ins and outs, no pun intended. They don't need to know the gory details. The kids don't need that images of their parents in their minds. But letting your kids know on a number of different issues. No, I've been there. Mom and dad have been there. Can we sit with you? That can be a gift sometimes. Thank you so much for the call, Candace. Much, much appreciated. Have a great week, and congrats to you and your husband for, man, experiencing the one of the worst things that can happen to a couple, and then deciding, okay, we're going to rebuild, and him going first. Kudos to that dude. I'm proud of him, man. And continuing to create a new marriage that y'all are proud of, that give y'all peace and hope, and that let your kids see that reconciliation is real and a good marriage is worth fighting for. We'll be right back. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. All right, listen, I'm not going to lie. I am struggling. I keep seeing everyone's vacation photos and their kids winning all these trophies and the fish they're catching, and I'm stuck here in this studio working and working and working. And all of us, we've all heard that comparison is the thief of joy. Here's the deal. Comparison is wired into us. We're social creatures, and we're designed to look around and make sure we're all fitting in. But when we get caught up wishing we were living someone else's lives, that we were somewhere other than where we are, and we become dissatisfied with our own lives, it can cause us to doubt, to feel like we're not enough, and ultimately to begin acting and thinking in ways we would never act or think because we're just trying to keep up. And when we start comparing our real lives with other people's imaginary social media curated lives, that comparison can become addicting and all-encompassing. Comparison can take our joy, our light, our laughter, and our vitality. It can take everything. I know this because occasionally it still happens to me, and I read the data, and I know it's happening to you. And when all this gets to be too much, it's time to call in my friends at Betterhelp. Betterhelp is 100% online therapy, staffed with licensed therapists, and it's convenient, flexible, and suited to fit your schedule. With a great therapist, you can learn positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, and learn how to become the best version of yourself, and stop the comparison trap and begin finding joy and peace in your own life. And by the way, therapy isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for all of us who are ready to get out of the comparison spin cycle and find our own peace and joy in the life we are creating. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Delony today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Delony. All right, let's go to Huntsville, Alabama, right down the road from Nashville, and talk to Sarah. Hey, Sarah, what's up?
Hey, it's a Monday, and who doesn't love Mondays?
I don't. I don't think Garfield does. Anyway, I love Mondays. I'm happy to be here. What's up?
Hey, so, I've recently been just struggling, I guess, with this tiny little black box I get to hold in my hand. And
Kelly's heart?
Basically.
What is it? What's the little tiny black box?
It's my phone. And, there's so much entertainment. There's so much I can look at. There's so much there's never going to, things aren't going to run out for me to look at. And you know what? I'm getting tired of it. And I want to spend more quality time with my husband, my little baby, and doing things that matter.
So what's your question?
So I've tried multiple times in years past, and, just basically social media obviously is the big thing where, I've deleted the apps. I went without it for several months at a time, several days at a time, several weeks at a time, so on and so forth. But I feel like as soon as I allow myself to get back in, it feels like a vacuum. Like I just get stuck back in, and before I know it, I'm spending hours and hours on end, and it's not fulfilling.
Mm-mm. What are you using the phone to avoid?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think entertainment is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
The flashy lights and the social media, that's secondary.
Mm-hmm.
What are you using it to avoid?
I haven't thought about that. I honestly feel like I've got an amazing life.
You don't, because you're hiding from it.
That could be true.
Tell me about your marriage. Does your husband use his phone all the time too?
Yes, he does.
Okay.
We're both on it.
Y'all just sit by each other on the couch, just 2 inches apart and 2,000 miles away from each other?
Yep, that sums it up.
How old are your kids?
We have one baby, and she's 6 months.
Okay. Were y'all on the phones before she came along?
Yes, we were. I would say it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
I will say we both are very intentional when we are spending time with her, like playing with her. We put the phones away. We try to not, be distracted by that when we're playing with her.
Can I tell you that's even more concerning to me?
Really?
Yeah. You know why?
Why is that?
Because that tells me when there's a relationship that you care about or that you're highly invested in, you can. And that tells me
wow.
that underneath this relationship with this new baby, your marriage is in trouble.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I say in trouble, it's not catastrophic, but it does tell me that probably for a season now. Like when people put their phones away, here's what they do. They delete their apps. They make some arbitrary, like, my phone doesn't leave my bag. And this is what my phone doesn't leave my bag. Or when I get home, the phone goes in a drawer or whatever. And that's cool. What they don't backfill that space with is, so me and my husband or me and my wife are going to make out a lot. Or we're going to go for a long walk. Or when I walk in the door at 6 o'clock, we're going to eat dinner together and we're both going to do the dishes. And then we are going to put the kid down for a 45-minute nap. And we're going to go sing karaoke. Like, you got to backfill that space with something. And most people don't. And you're forced to deal with the elephant in the room, which is in your own home, in your own marriage, you're bored to death. Or maybe y'all don't find each other attractive anymore. Or you don't like each other as much as you thought you were going to or as you once did. Or it's this quiet life of desperation as the plane is just slowly landing in neutral, right? And so you go back to the flashy thing, to the funny thing, to the silly thing. And if it hasn't happened already, this is when somebody at work texts you a funny emoji and you text them back. And then they text you back, they text you back. And now you're back and forth with somebody that you're not married to.
Right.
Or you have a 9-month pregnancy and then you get further and further apart there because it's hard to talk about pregnancy and I don't know how to discuss and what to disclose and this is weird and this is awkward and yada, yada, yada. And suddenly you look up and it's been a year and a half now in your home. And whew, man, there can be some hard stuff to deal with there.
Mm-hmm.
How does that sound?
I mean, I haven't really thought of it in that depth. I've been wanting to, I guess I should say, I might have seen this coming far, far off, and I'm wanting to nip it in the bud before it goes off the rails. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess I sometimes feel like I might not even have the tools I need in expressing what I need to my husband, which sounds silly.
It's not
Why
silly
don't
at all.
you just say it?
It's not silly at all. It's not silly at all. It's hard and it's scary. And it's hard and scary for him too. I can't imagine Alabama men, well, that's rude. Tennessee men, Texas men in general aren't told, hey man, here's how to sit down and be honest and vulnerable and open with your wife. Here's how to show that tenderness side. Right? You're told just to suck it up and move on. And it's really hard when your wife's sitting there, when you have a 6-month-old and there's not a lot of training, there's no connection, there's no tools to connect. And so you got this Jolly Roger device that feels like you're connecting with everybody. And it allows you just to Xanax over your life.
Yeah.
So I'll push back on one thing. You do have the tools. Every one of these devices has an off button.
Right.
You can turn it off. The question is, what are you going to backfill that time with? And I'm going to send you all of the questions for humans for couples decks, and I'm going to send you all the questions for humans for friends decks. I want y'all just for 30 days, try those out.
Okay.
All right. And then here's the steps below that. Do you have a pen?
I can grab one real quick.
Hey, don't worry about it. You can just you'll be able to get this episode, okay?
Okay.
I want y'all to imagine that the marriage y'all had. How long have y'all been married, by the way?
Going on 6 years.
Okay. The 6-year marriage that you've had is over.
Okay.
Ta-da! Doesn't exist anymore. Was it good before you got pregnant, by the way?
Oh, yes. And I would still say, like, it feels good, but, you still know there's something.
That's right.
If we're not fighting and,
No, it's because y'all are both Xanaxed out of your minds. You're on opiates,
Probably.
which is the phone, right? Yeah. You're going to fight more now when you put the phones away because you're going to have to feel.
Right.
So tell me some cool things about the first 2 or 3 years when y'all were married. What was awesome? Was your sex life rad?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Was your like?
It still is.
Ooh. Was your going out fun?
Yes, we're on a budget. We actually don't go out just a terrible much time because we're trying to
Pay off debt.
hit some goals. Yes,
Okay.
and but we just enjoyed. Even if we weren't going out, we just we stayed home. We played games together.
There you go.
We just enjoyed each other's presence. I feel like.
Okay. I want y'all to reverse engineer that world in this totally new context. What does that mean? I want y'all to be honest about our marriage before baby is over.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in fact, that means it can be more awesome because we get to rebuild it however we want.
Right.
And it can be that he doesn't know how to do bedtimes the way you want them done. He doesn't know how you want dishes done. You just get frustrated that they're not being done. Or you see what I'm saying? Like, let's start with very basic needs and wants.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about very basic needs and wants around money, around sex and intimacy, around laughter, around hanging out. And listen, this is going to sound super unsexy, okay? But if y'all aren't already, you got to put sex on the calendar. You have to keep a notes app either on your phone or I keep it in a little journal. Things to talk about with my wife. I have so much going on in my head all the time. I probably get 200 text messages a day just from random people all over the country. It's such and I can't, as for emails, good grief, and direct messages, it's just madhouse. Not to mention the work and the projects and we're working on something that's going to be out in a year, it's just all the time. And then I sit down with my wife and my body exhales so much that I forget those things I want to talk to her about. So I write them down. And then we plan trips. Hey, we're going to drive an hour to so-and-so. And I'll have a list of things I'd love to talk to her about. And she'll have a list of things. Maybe she heard something in a podcast or she read something in a book and vice versa. And we'll chit-chat over them. Or we'll pull out the Questions for Humans cards sometimes and just dig back in. Things that, like, that it may have changed over the last few years, right? So some of the questions, the way she answered them 2 years ago are different than she answered them now, which is cool. So all that to say is y'all have to be honest about the marriage we had is over, and let's build this new marriage. And I don't want you to give any more power to that stupid phone than it deserves. You can't beat it, period. You cannot defeat the phone, meaning you can't casually drink. That phone is wired to defeat you. Social media apps are wired to be better than you when it comes to just not like, I'm going to open up a bag of Skittles and just have 2. You can't. They're better than you. And if you can, you should probably go see somebody because you're a psychopath. But when it comes to a phone, you got to turn it off. Turn it off. And then you and your husband have to stare at each other and say, okay, what now? And we have to rebuild a marriage and make it more amazing than it was before because we get to do that. I'm about to have a high school kid. My wife and I have never been married with a high school kid. So we're rebuilding right now, and I can't wait to see where it goes. It's going to be exciting and fun and super rad. So all that to say is turn the phone off. Create some time from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. where there's no phones, 0. And then be honest about, hey, I need some help here. I'd like to just sit down here. You want to go make out right here. It's Thursday night. It's sexy night. Whatever. Friday night, let's go do karaoke. Whatever it is, let's rebuild this thing from the floor up. And don't cash out on this really important thing. Have other friends, other couple friends. You have a group of women that you go hang out with. He needs a group of guys he can go hang out with. And then y'all come back together and you're renewed and refreshed and have new ideas and new things to complain about and talk about and imagine. This is rebuilding a new marriage. I'm excited for what comes next for you guys. All of this starts with turning off the freaking phones. Stop numbing out on the life you have and look at each other and say, hey, 5 years from now, we're on a road that is not going to lead to anything good. Let's shut these phones off. Let's turn the TV off. Let's look at each other and let's rebuild something amazing. Sarah, thank you for the call. Hang on the line. We'll hook you up with a bunch of the Questions for Humans cards. We'll be right back. All right, so we're heading into the season of chaos. Summer. Driving, bored kids, travel plans, camps, extra yard work every weekend, sports. It's so much going on. And it's important right now that you make concrete plans to keep doing the things you normally do to keep you spiritually plugged in, well, and whole. I am using Hallow almost every day to learn on my drive, the lo-fi music when I'm journaling on the road, and during my evening meditations. Hallow is a one-stop shop for all things faith and scripture while I'm on the go. Hallow is an app that's easy to download, and it has daily prayers, lecture series, meditations, music, stories, nighttime sleep programs, and more. And this summer, they've even added some radio stations for those long family drives, and they've added spiritual classic audiobooks for fellow nerds like me who like to drive or mow or clean and read a book at the same time. And because you're a Dr. John Delony Show listener, you can try all of this out, all 10,000 sermons and lecture series and scripture readings, all of it for 3 months for free. And that's basically the whole summer, so you might as well give it a shot. Go to hallow.com/Delony today for 3 free months. That's Hallow, HALLOW.com/Delony. All right, let's go out to Boise, Idaho, and talk to Jessica. Hey, Jessica, what's up?
Hi, how are you, Dr. John?
I'm doing great. How about you?
So good.
Awesome. What's up?
Well, I don't feel like it's a really big, deep question, but I just want to know how to help my 7-year-old. He was recently diagnosed with ADHD. And I was diagnosed as an adult. We suspect my husband has it. So I just don't know what childhood looks like. And I'm trying to find out, how do I kind of support him and encourage him and help him understand how it works without feeling broken or, like I can't do it. I want to give him some hope and figure out how to do life with the way his really cool brain works. So.
Okay. Classic ADHD. You have some questions about how the world works, and you minimize them to make sure everybody else around you feels okay. Don't ever do that again. You got it?
Okay.
This is a big deal. This is a real big deal. Tell me about your childhood. How'd you grow up?
Relatively normal, I think, although normal's different for everyone. But I was pretty decent at school, actually. I didn't have a lot of the really classic hyperactive issues. Mine's more inattentive, but I grew up pretty good. I am the oldest, and my parents were really young when they had me, so they kind of grew up with me. But we're really, it was good.
You're so great. You're like checking every box possible.
Yeah. How do I get through them all? Yeah.
When you were diagnosed as an adult, what led you to go get tested?
It kind of actually started, my brother-in-law was tested, and he was talking about some things, and I was like, oh yeah, like that's a lot me. And I was never officially diagnosed with anxiety, but I felt like I had anxiety. That's what I identified with, but not perfectly. And then the more I heard about it, and then I did a bunch of reading on women with ADHD, and I was like, yeah, I feel like my brain just tries to think about everything, and I can't stop it. And that's why I felt like, and so that's what led me down that road, was just hearing more about it and figuring that out.
Who diagnosed you?
So it started with a therapist that worked with me, and then eventually I went through a doctor.
Okay.
I think that was it.
Have you taken medication?
I did for a period of time. Okay. I don't regularly. Yeah.
And did you like being on it? Do you like being off it? Tell me about it.
So I didn't have any negative impact on a stimulant, and that worked okay, but I didn't feel like it magically made my life better like I kind of thought it would. Okay. And then I was trying to get pregnant. We just had our 4th baby, so we're busy. But so I don't know. I have a funny relationship with medication. I'm not against it, but I also don't think it's necessarily something we need to have forever. So I don't really know how my relationship with that should look like with a child.
Okay. Man, there's so much here, and you're not calling about you. All right. I want to. Here's the thing. I want to be super direct and honest about this because it's such an important conversation. And oh man, some parents hear this and they're relieved, and other parents hear this and they are melted. Can you just promise me you'll be relieved?
Yes.
That's so unfair.
Yes. No, yes, I will.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So ADD, ADHD is not an illness in the medical sense, like disease, or it's not like that. Okay. And it drives me bananas when people call it a medical issue. It has biological consequences, of course, but it's not this fixed inherited brain disorder. Okay. And I took that line from the great Dr. Mate. Here's the easiest way I can explain it. ADHD is the way some bodies respond to chaos. You being raised as a young girl by basically grown-up teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And some people's bodies would respond to that by shutting the system down. Some people's bodies would respond to that by overstimulation. Some people's bodies would feel that deeply. Just so happens that your body responds to it with chaos, right? Everything all at once. And by the way, you mentioned it, girls especially tend to not have the hyperactivity part. They sit in the back of the classroom and the teachers pat them on the back because they're being quiet. They just don't realize they've just checked out. They've tuned out because they're creating their own universe. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to a 7-year-old, and you say your husband might have it too, tell me about him.
Yeah, he's, his dad, if you looked up the definition of ADHD, it's him. So I try to figure out what's learned and what's, natural, but he just is very, I don't want to say impulse driven, but kind of, right? It's what do we want right now? And it can be really exciting, but I have to repeat myself a million times. It's great. He's amazing, but yeah.
And you just described him perfectly. In some things, he's great and amazing and wonderful. And other things, you just want to pull your hair out one by one, right? And it's this toggle of, if you could just be on time and start one project and finish this project. And does he have magical time?
Yeah. Oh, we both do. So
okay.
yeah.
Oh, that's just super great. Okay. So here's the part where I'm going to ask you to not feel guilty and just shut down. But that sort of stuff everywhere, a little bit chaotic of an environment. There's shoes and socks and mess and here. And what do we have for dinner? And dinner seems to surprise you every night at 6:45. It's like, what? Dinner? And that flurry of activity, your child is going to have a body that responds to chaos. And it might respond by running around, and it might respond by sitting in the back of the room and just shutting down. Okay? So the first thing, tell me about your little boy before I just start launching into this. Tell me about your little boy.
Yeah, he is so sweet and extremely empathetic, and he's a good kid. And it's really, his teacher is the one who brought it up, but he just has a hard time focusing, and he, can't, timers aren't really helping, and sitting there isn't, distraction is really difficult.
It's a nightmare.
At home, I feel like he does okay. He sometimes gets really angry, and I can tell it's when he feels misunderstood.
Okay.
If he's just having a hard time communicating, then he gets really angry. But otherwise, he's just really at his core such a good, sweet kid. But,
sure. So what is something or some things that he can absolutely lock in on?
Like what? Like makes him excited?
No, not makes him excited. What is something he can do for hours? Can he do Legos, or can he play video games or read about dinosaurs? Like, what are some things he can do just lock in?
Yeah, he loves, you kind of hit him, Legos are great, and learning about dinosaurs. He struggles with reading a little bit.
Okay.
So if he watches TV, it typically is about, let's learn about more animals or dinosaurs, or he loves learning. He just absorbs it about things like
so
that.
The fallacy of the ADHD brain is it's just this chaotic mess. And what we try to do is we try to impose more restriction and lock that kid even further into things that bore them to death or that make them uncomfortable, especially sensations, especially feelings, especially being surrounded in environments where they don't feel safe and they don't feel loved, and their bodies start responding to chaos. And so what do? We get mad at them. They get in trouble. And we've created these systems that they have to sit in a chair for 8 hours, which is insane. And on and on and on and on and on. Okay? So here's the conversation I had in my house, and I'm going to protect my kids. But I sat down with one of my kids. And by the way, your father-in-law, his picture would be behind my picture. Okay, so I've spent years down the rabbit hole on the epigenetics of ADHD and the biochemistry of ADHD and yada, yada, all of it. I had to figure out what was wrong with my brain, and I was terrified of passing it on to my kids. And I sat down with one of my children, and I said the following. God gave you and me very special brains and bodies. And that brain allows us to be extra sensitive to the feelings of other people, which makes us really good at sitting with people when they're sad and when they're upset. And it makes us a lot of fun to be around because we love laughing when other people are funny. We also are really attuned when people are mad at us. And we even sometimes create or invent other people being mad at us because we want to protect ourselves. And so here's what I did. I framed it as this is both the greatest thing ever, and it's going to make you a gift to humanity. And I also said our brains and bodies need some extra attention. We have to do some extra work that other people don't have to do because we do live in this crazy world. And I can't tell you, two things happened there. Number one, my kid felt not alone. And I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen their entire body just whoosh. It was pretty magical. The second thing is, it's given us a common language moving forward. Sometimes I'll just tap my head gently, like remember our special brain. And sometimes I'll tap our chest, like I know your feelings are really big right now. And that doesn't mean they're telling you the truth. Okay? But there's an important part of ADHD is this. Connectivity. Not everyone, but lots of kids love hugs. They love skin-to-skin contact. Is that yours?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a magical moment in the morning, and tell him, I know this is ridiculous, but will you do this for Mom? And I want you to put your hands on either side of his face. And there's a lot of neurophysiology about this. I want you to put your hands on either side of his face and look him in the eyes. If he'll let you do it for 30 seconds, that would be magic. But most kids are too maniacal. But 10 or 15 seconds. And just say, can Mommy hold your face? And I get reports from parents all over the country tell me their kids will just come plug into their hands. It just gives peace to a kid's nervous system. And then I want you to do things like, hey, it's walk time. Especially in the summer, you can manage this. 30 minutes of walking. Especially in the school year, making sure that we're going to get outside and see some sunlight before we go to school, and especially when we get home from school, both of those times, the circadian rhythm is really important. We're going to be overly attentive to lots of extra sugar, and some dietary stuff, but we're not going to go down internet rabbit holes. There's all kind of crazy madhouse stuff on the internet. And just wait till the comments on this one, by the way. It's going to be filled with all sorts of, geez Louise. Mm-hmm. But there is some research about excessive sugar and sweets. And also, is your kid obsessed with sweets?
No, actually, not really.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay. What does the doctor recommend? Or what is the person who diagnosed your kid? What have they recommended?
I mean, his pediatrician brought up medication right away.
Okay.
And I told him I wasn't totally sure. And I love his pediatrician, but I'm not sure that I align with him perfectly on this, because he just basically said behavioral stuff tends to, not prove to be as effective as medication. And so he's not pushing me on it, but that would be his preference.
Ooh, man, that's tough.
Yeah. So.
All right. I'm going to rattle off a few things that I wrote down here, okay?
Okay.
I want you and your husband to make a commitment to each other to be militant about cleaning up your physical space.
Okay.
Is that going to be hard or easy?
I'm not going to lie, it would probably be hard at first, but it's getting easier. We've been kind of on a journey of just decluttering and getting rid of all the junk. And
cool.
So it aligns with what we're working on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If y'all can pull off family hugs, all three of you together, that'd be amazing. Or you've got 4 kids, right?
Yeah. The youngest one's 3 months old, so
okay.
He doesn't need to join in.
Okay, yeah. I have a rollout Olympic wrestling mat in my living room. And me and both of my kids, my son and my daughter, will wrestle. Just the physical contact. You get both skin-to-skin contact, you get the competitive stuff, and you get all of that excess built-up energy has a place to go. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but if y'all are in the backyard, if y'all can roll around in the grass, if y'all can play basketball, if you can do some stuff together, right? Painting together is big. Playing music together is big. Because a 7-year-old's going to want to be like mom and dad, and is also going to feel like being like mom and dad makes them feel a little bit out of sorts. And so creativity, art, music gives them something to everybody to do together and to plug in. Some of my greatest times with one of my kids is just sitting there. We don't talk much. We just paint together. I'm an awful painter and even worse at drawing. One of my other kids, we play music together. Okay? Sleep. Good God, help you sleep. I'll say it again for those in the back. Sleep. Do you have a good sleep routine?
Yeah, he wakes up earlier than everyone else, no matter what time we put him to bed. So I'm not sure how to encourage him to sleep longer. But
I would let him sleep, or I would put him to bed earlier. I would let him wake up early. That's fine.
Okay.
Let his chronotype be his chronotype, but that means it's just tougher in the evenings. And then, man, the more you can teach him to accept himself for his weirdness.
Yeah.
I don't have any evidence to back this up, but I believe that there's some great conversations, anthropological conversations about a certain part of a population in a given tribe. You would have wanted to have some sort of ADHD wiring so that you can feel, so that you can be up early, out and about. So you see what I'm saying? It would have played a good role in a community until we decided that entire community has to be so rigid for all these hours a day, and we reward you for not speaking, for not thinking independently, for not being interested in what you want to be interested in, but being interested in what some stupid state test is going to tell you have to be interested in. And then we blame the brain. We call the brain broken or diseased, and it's just madness. And so I understand kids have to go to school. And by the way, there's going to be tons of comments. Please don't read any of the comments on this conversation, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if y'all end up with Dexedrine, Ritalin, or any of that kind of stuff, and you reach a point when his behavior in class is behavior outside of class, he is becoming somebody that he can't. I don't know how to say this in the right way. He is becoming somebody that he can't be happy with. Then there is times when medication can help, but it is infinitely rarer than we diagnose and we prescribe.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I would go to the ends of the earth to figure out other alternatives before I sat down and put my kids on medication. That is just me telling you what I would do in my house. And me being fully honest, I'm not a physician. I'm not a psychiatrist. Okay. But I would go to the ends of the earth to try to figure out other alternatives.
Yeah, I've heard you mention that in previous calls just softly. And I'm like, I really like that perspective, to be honest, because I feel like there are ways around this. So we're working on.
But listen,
I just don't want him to feel broken, I guess.
So. A 7-year-old absorbs their environment. Okay. So the greatest gift you can give him is you and your husband work really hard to get well. In my house, I have a sign in several different places that says, "Don't forget to remember." Now my wife gently says it to me. And I've talked about this on the show. I literally won't even see the cups in my car. I just get another cup and another cup and another cup and another cup. I don't see them. But as I'm getting out of my truck, if I see a little sign on the door that says, don't forget to remember, I do remember how good and peaceful it feels to get into a clean car. So I will then turn and look and see, oh, there's 7 Yetis in this car. Right? Or don't forget to remember how good it feels when the weights are all racked up in the home gym. Don't forget to remember how good it feels when you make your bed and you get into a clean bed with the made bed in the evening. And so I've had to work really hard to practice these outside things. And by the way, to make peace with the things I don't want to change. I don't ever want to change the fact that I'm overly empathetic. I don't ever want to change that my feelings are really strong, stronger than my wife. Like my skin burns sometimes with feeling. I don't ever want that to go away. But that means I've got to, when something starts at 8 o'clock, I've got to start leaving way, 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 way earlier because I know I'm going to get distracted because I got to be there at 8 o'clock. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'd love for you and your husband to sit down and say, okay, where is there chaos in this house? And chaos does not mean there's like shoot 'em ups and laser beams and yet none of that. Where is their disconnection? Where are their true frustrations? And here's a question that you and your husband can ask each other. How can I love you better? How can I love you today? And the answer might be, man, it would really, you could really love me by being on time. You could really love me by putting your phone down and just making eye contact with me and asking how my day went. And what we're doing when we do that, we ask that question and we're honest about it, is we begin to strip out the panic. We begin to strip out the eye rolls. We begin to strip out the chaos. We begin to strip out the clutter everywhere. By the way, owing people money puts your body on edge and spins it up. There's all these different ideas. And then your 7-year-old's body's just going to respond to that. And then we blame the kid. That's just the system we got, is blame the kid. And I don't want to blame anybody. But I do want parents to look at the household they're creating and look at their marriage and the stability and, as Dr. Becky calls it, the sturdiness of that marriage. And then I want to talk about, okay, what are we doing with this kid when it comes to routine, when it comes to food, when it comes to play, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to, we have moments in his life when he is locked in. So his brain can. Let's pour gasoline on those fires. Let's don't quench that fire and try to get them excited about chlorophyll, more like borophyll. But we do need to teach them, hey, sometimes you got to pass the science test. So here's what must be true for you to pass the science test, because that's life too. And anybody who's like, we just don't need to take science tests, that's stupid also. Whew. Hope that was helpful, Jessica. Your kid's not broken. Your kid is an absolute gift. The system we drop those kids into is broken. And now as parents, our job is to teach them, A, you're okay. You're a gift. And here's how we navigate systems that we get dropped into, because all of us do, that are hard for us to operate in. And it's a parent's job to say, okay, this system is too much for him. Or this is just squashed in too much. And we're going to find out alternatives. And then there's moments when we have to sit down with a medical professional and say, I've done everything I can. Please help. And by the way, I've done that too, Jessica. So thank you so much for the call. To go all the way back to the beginning, this is a big deal. And I'm really grateful that you and your husband are trying to seek this out, seek out some answers and to dig in. Call anytime. And if your husband wants to call, tell him I've got some ideas for him too. We'll be right back. It is one of my most sincere honors to be partnering with an amazing supplement company. I'm talking about Thorne. Thorne is a world-class, personalized and science-backed supplement and health testing company used by elite athletes, thinkers, doers, and world changers all over the globe. I've been taking Thorne for years, long before I was a YouTuber and a podcaster. It's where I get my creatine, my super EPA omega fish oil, and more. My kids take it. My wife takes it. Thorne is a staple in the Delony household. Thorne is pure, third-party tested, and they are redefining what it means to live longer and healthier. And for Delony Show listeners, Thorne is providing 25% off everything in their entire lineup. Go to thorne.com/U/Delony to open up your digital dispensary, and the discount will be taken at checkout. That's Thorne, THORNE.com/U/Delony. All right, we're back. Hey, we have to talk about Inside Out 2.
Yeah, we went and saw it this weekend.
Yeah, I saw it right when it came out, and man, I have gotten so many requests like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Is it okay to take my kid? What do you think? So, very cool. What'd you think?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought the first one was great, though. And so I thought they did a really good job on it. I am curious to know your thoughts specifically on the part where she has the panic attack and how they dealt with that.
In the hockey rink?
Yeah.
So, if you have a child, I think every kid needs to go see Inside Out 2. That's just what I think. I took my kids. Both of my kids will go again. And I think it provides an amazing picture that gives a child a reference point of what's going on inside their body. I think that movie is very helpful. Inside Out was helpful. This is very helpful. I'm going to do some spoiler alerts here. So if you haven't seen it yet, I put my disclaimer. I put my opinion. Go see it. Everybody needs to go see it. By the way, moms and dads, you need to go see it too. If you don't have kids and you're in your 30s, go see it on a date. It's worth seeing. It just provides some imagery for what we all feel. So this is spoiler alert time. 2 things that I thought it got really right. Incredibly right. Amy Poehler plays Joy, and our voices Joy, and does just such a phenomenal job. But one of the most important lessons of the movie is Joy figures out how to hide bad memories. She gets rid of them, and she begins to get rid of them at an accelerating rate. And the movie does a great job showing how important hanging on to all of our memories can be, because there's a scene where she, the character, the young girl, gets a big penalty and almost costs her team the game. She gets pulled out of the game for a penalty, and then she comes back in, and at the very end of the game, she wins the game. What she learns in real life is sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes you make poor decisions and there's consequences. And if you're persistent and gritty and show back up, there can be, not always, but can be a happy ending. Well, Joy takes all these bad memories, like the penalty, and she gets rid of them. She figures a way to get rid of them. And later on in the movie, when there's another big penalty moment, the child doesn't have any of those bad memories plus the overcoming of the obstacles to draw back on. And so she feels all alone and like she can't do it, and she has no reservoir to draw on. So they do a great job in understanding that bad things that happen to us, man, secrets will kill you. Bad memories hidden away will kill you. It's the processing and then moving through them, not around them or not avoiding them. That's so powerful. That's number 1. Number 2, the character of anxiety is just awesome. It's just awesome. And character, what was it embarrassment?
So there's the new ones are anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and ennui.
Ennui. All perfect. Those were perfect. Ennui is amazing. Just so good. But embarrassment does a great job. And shame, it's just so good. So the picture of anxiety and when anxiety takes over is just exquisite. It's excellent, excellent, excellent. So back to your question. I thought during the panic attack scene, they almost followed Building an Anxious Life to a T. And they didn't in that one scene. And I was a little bit, here's what I wish they would have done. So she has a panic attack in there's disconnection. There's all the stuff that we talked about on the show for years. By the way, I didn't make any of this up. It's just reading the anxiety literature. Clearly, they've got some mental health professionals working on that show too. But when she has the panic attack, she solves it on her own in her head. And her friends are right outside. And I wish one of her friends would reach in and hold her hand. And I thought that was about to happen in the movie. And I was going to go, that's it right there. And her friends didn't.
Yeah, when her friend notices what's happening, I thought she was about to come in there and be like, are you, like, grab her hand or something. And that was the one piece I was hoping for as well.
Oh, man, because connection. Whew. And whenever I'm around somebody that's having a panic attack, I have just a very step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But step 1 is to literally hold their hand, skin on skin contact. And if they give me permission, I'll put their hand on my chest, a grown up, and they can just feel my heartbeat. And then we'll just go for a walk, right? So that can roll somebody out of a panic attack right away. But seeing her sit there, it felt very Hollywood. Like you can do this all on your own, and that's just not true. And so that was the miss. And then she opens her eyes, she's healed from her own panic attack, and then her friends are right there.
Right. The idea of a child having a panic attack by themselves and then just being like, and I'm good.
Right.
Yeah, I wish somebody
that
either...
was the one piece I was like, no.
Either one of the older girls or one of her friends would have seen it happening.
Or even the coach, the adult would have been even better, right? But when she opens her eyes, her friends are right there. And so that was my only But in all, excellent movie, very, very well done. And the imagery alone, the giving a kid a picture of, I'm not crazy. There's something inside my brain trying to protect me. Let's see if I can bring forth some of these other things like gratitude or joy. And I love that idea because it separates a kid from themselves. It's all of us need to separate ourselves from the inner voice that tells us we're broken, something's wrong with us. I'm not my bad thoughts. I'm not my body's reaction. Like the last caller, I'm not my ADHD. My body's just responding to chaos. All right, great. Let's just solve the chaos and let's be gentle with our bodies. And so in that regard, good on that movie. Great, great, great. I wish we had more movies that were so thoughtful about the science and so thoughtful about the art. It's hilarious. It's a funny, funny movie. And we're so thoughtful on the imagery that we're going to put in kids' heads. It's just, it was a welcome change to the normal just nonsense out there. And you and your family, same?
Oh, yeah, we loved it. I loved how they showed the panic attack with in her brain because it was like having someone who's had them. Like, that's it. No other emotions can get in. No other thoughts can get in. It's just like the swirling,
That was excellent.
It was so well done.
Yeah.
And the idea that anxiety thought she was helping, she was protecting her. Like, that's just so perfect. So
and joy understanding that I can become toxic positivity.
Right.
You can't just smile everything away.
Yeah. And that as she's growing up, there are more emotions now. It's not just the core, 4 or whatever. That movie helped us. The first one helped us so much when my son was little, dealing with anger and him being able to recognize, the redhead guy, is mad right now. And so just seeing that one, they do such a good job. And I think it's the first time I can ever recall a movie like that, a children's movie or otherwise, that is like, that's life-changing, especially to a child.
I always smile. One of my greatest moments with my dad is I took him to see Lewis Black about 10 years ago, the comedian who plays anger. And my dad was laughing so hard. At one point I looked over and thought, he's going to die here. He's going to have a heart attack. And I almost started to stop, like, let's go out in the lobby. My dad was laughing so hard. That comedian was so out of his mind hilarious. And I remember exhaling and being like, if you die laughing, you win. You win. So I just turned and we laughed until the concert was over, man.
So my son's 18 now, and he still we bought him the anger doll during all that and he would pull it out and he's like, I feel like this right now. And he still has that. And at 18, we were cleaning out his room and he was like, no, I'm keeping that because it's still set for him, even such a symbol of I'm angry and that's okay. I just have to learn how to control it. But he still has that sitting on the shelf.
I didn't even think about that. I'm going to get me an anxiety doll for the shelf in here. That would be fun.
That'd be great.
That would be cool. All right. Well, so go see it. Go see the movie. And if I just ruined it for you, you should have seen it earlier. There you go. Just kidding. Love y'all. Stay in school. Be nice to each other. It's going to be all right. We'll see you soon.